Hey RC drivers, welcome back to the new workshop. I am really excited about today's video because the product I'm about to show you is one of the reasons why I rebuilt the entire workshop. It just had to be in the perfect space for when I showed you, and that new product is from Axial. It's a brand new platform from the ground up. It's over here on the workbench. It is the Ryft. It's a rock bouncer, and this thing is awesome. Let's head over and check it out. There it is, the Ryft Rock Bouncer. How amazing does this rig look? Check out the cage work, the custom tires. This thing is 3 to 4S powered, 4-wheel drive. It is just going to tear up dirt and just throttle up rocks. It's going to give you a lot of action. So cool looking. But first, before we get into it, let's head over and check out the Axial box art, because Axial has some great box art with all of their rigs. And this one is actually going to tell a little bit of a story here. So we've got the black cage version, but they are also going to offer this orange cage version as well. So you'll be able to pick between the two. But let's get back over here to this rig. I've had this thing for a month, and I've just been dying to tell you guys about it. It's just so cool. I've already taken it apart. I've gone over all of the details. We're going to learn all about that here today. And if you're really here just for the action, you want to see some cool action stuff, I'll put a time key in the description below and some links as well, and you can go check that out. But if you really want to learn about this kit, follow along with me. We're going to get into some really good details. And let's start off with the cage itself, the bodywork on the outside. So we just have a few panels. That's all you really need on a rock bouncer. They've got some really cool graphics on the side. They always do. Check out that Ryft logo, the RBX10 logo. Just love that they kept with that X10, in their chassis designation. We all know the SCX10 and the RR10. So, it's really cool that they're just keeping the name so close among all of their offerings. But anyway, back to the cage here. Just check out this cage work. I mean, it looks just like a real rock bouncer. It looks so cool. Check out the bracing here for the shock perch, and same in the back here. Everything nice and solid. This is what really got me when I first got it. This is a hood that pops up so you can access your battery. There's your two body clips right here. Actually, let me just pull it off so you guys could check this out. Pull these body clips off, nice and simple. Open it up. There's your battery access. Single Velcro strap on the inside. IC5 connector, just in case I forget about it later. But there's extra holes in here, so you'll be able to put battery tabs. So if you want to run a shorty battery pack and adjust the weight bias of where it is in that tray right there, you'll be able to do that. So this thing already has adjustability. We're getting into some of the tuning features. That's how cool this thing is. They've put a lot of work into it, and it really, really shows. But the cage work, just awesome. Again, we've got the graphics up front here, cool Ryft logo. And then let's talk about the interior. So we've got a molded Lexan interior, kind of like you would see on some of the other Axial vehicles. They've got the ABS heads on there, all pre-decaled from the factory. We got some additional decals like the dashboard and everything to just set off the look even more. And then I really like this. I mean, it's not ultra scale to have a speed controller sticking out, but this looks really, really cool that the speed controller is just chilling out there. Kind of gives you the idea of, yes, it's a scale machine, but we're still hardcore hobbyists too. And they're showing off that Spectrum speed controller right there. Plus it allows you to get some extra cooling up top as well, because again, running on 3 to 4S, you're probably gonna build up a little heat in here, especially climbing rocks and stuff. So it's great that it's out in the open to grab some cool air. Let's see, what else can we talk about as far as the details on the outside? I do want to talk to you about this fuel cell. So here is another option type of part that's on the car. You could either put some weight in here if you want to adjust some weight bias on the vehicle, or you could go and use this for some spare electronics, something like an LED light module or BEC. So you'll be able to put it in that box if you want to. There are no LED light fixtures or mounting bosses on the chassis, or on the cage, I should say. And rock bouncers, they don't usually drive in the dark. So, if you really want LEDs on here, you could probably go and fit something yourself, but it doesn't come stock. Just want to kind of point that out to you guys. All right, so that really wraps up the exterior features of the Ryft. And one thing I do want to mention as well while we're talking about the outside is the cage work. So with some of the other Axial vehicles, you have to take off a lot of screws to get to the inside in order to work on, let's say, the electronics, or maybe swap out some option parts or something like that. With this, it's not too bad. I've already had it apart, and so you have to remove 4 screws on the bottom from each side. which isn't too bad as long as you have an electric driver. So that's 8 screws. There's 2 screws on the battery tray, so you'll have to remove those, and then 4 shock screws, and then the cage will come off, and then you'll be able to work on the whole chassis setup once you pull the cage off. So it's really not too bad. Again, if you got an electric driver, you're good to go. All right, now let's move on to the tires, and these things are awesome. They're Super Swamper tires. However, they come siped from the factory. Check that out. We've already got grooves in there. You don't need to go and customize them yourself. You know, we got these nice big lugs now to really grab some traction. Check out that nice black wheel in there, and you probably already noticed they are glued. Now, why are they glued? You would probably think with a scale type of vehicle, you'd probably want beadlocks or something like that. As I mentioned, this thing is going to run on 4S, and when you're ripping on 4S, maybe you're stuck on some rocks and you're just throttling the thing, most likely the beadlock is going to pull. So that's why they went with glue. These glue bead joints are not going to pull when you're ripping on the throttle. And I think it's a really good decision. As you can see, there is some foam on the inside, so that will help, but it's a really nice soft compound on here. I think it's really going to grab well. All right, let me turn this thing so we can see the axle. And this is a brand new axle from Axial Racing. It's the AR14B axle, all brand new. As you can see, it's got an offset pumpkin in the front, and it has the same offset in the rear because the transmission, of course, the outdrives are on this side of the vehicle. But back up front here, the first thing that really stands out is that metal diff cover. Check that thing out. So when you're bashing into rocks, this thing is going to take a lot of abuse. Next up, I mean, just check out the axle itself. A lot of bracing on there. We got some lower bracing, some upper bracing here. And as you can see, the servo is kind of fitted into this cage that's molded into the axle, which is pretty cool, I think. It is angled back to help with the clearance, and they really put some time into this. Now, this is something I think a lot of people are going to like. The C-hubs, the pivot mounts are all separate, so you can go and swap those out if something happens. Unlike some of the other Axial one-piece housings, you know, where people say, you know, they really wish it was separate pieces, it is here. So that's a good thing, especially since, you know, you're going to be hitting rocks. Something might happen, you know. This looks pretty beefy. It looks like they did a great job designing it. That is going to take a lot of hits, but you know, things can happen. So, you know, we got a nice looking C-hub there, a lot of screws holding it. Check out that steering knuckle as well. You know, a lot of support there, especially for the steering link. We've got pins with screws to capture them. And at the end of the axle there, you can see we've got faux disc brakes, faux calipers, and one other thing I wanted to mention beyond the 12mm hex behind the wheel is this is an 8mm nut on there. So we've got a really heavy-duty axle setup in this rig. Really liking the way everything looks here. And same with the mount itself for the shock and the lower length of the suspension. Just a really nice looking setup. We got steel screws in there, even steel pivot balls. Even where they don't even have anything mounted to it, they put an extra pivot ball in there just to keep everything nice and solid, no flex in there, and looks really good. Now, from what I gather, the steering angle is about 45 degrees. It looks like the tire hits, so it's pretty close. I'm not sure if you're going to get the full swing on that, but it definitely looks like it's pretty close to it. What you could also see in there is the universal. So we got universals in the front, and there's steel shafts in the back. I'll show you the rear of the rig in a little bit, but I mean, hardly any flex at all. I really have to push on this thing to get anything to move over here. Hopefully that's gonna hold up to the rocks. All right, let me spin this thing around so you can check out the rear axle. There it is. Check out the truss work on the top of the axle. Everything is really built to hold up to the abuse this thing is going to go through. Inside, we do have ball bearings, rubber sealed throughout the driveline in most places. So like internally in the transmission, there were some metal shielded bearings, and then, you know, wherever they're exposed to dirt, that's where they have a rubber shield. Inside here, we do have differentials. I should have mentioned that while we were talking about the front, but there is a differential in the rear, center, and front of this rig. So inside, there is a million weight oil throughout, and there's metal gears, of course. It's got to be metal gears. So I like everything that I saw in the driveline. And let's talk about the drive shafts next in the center. So we've got the wild bore drive shafts. We got the metal yokes and even captured sleeves here that help the screw pin stay in. So, you know, it's the right setup. These are proven and have worked in other Axial vehicles. And then let's talk about the transmission. But actually, before I talk about the transmission, since I have this thing over, check out the both sides on the center skid here. Nice and smooth, you know, just no spots to really catch on anything. So that's definitely good for something that's going to be climbing the rocks. All right, now the center transmission. Just kind of gonna flip this thing over since I can't pull the body off of it. And I'll talk about the center transmission. So inside, again, we've got a center diff. We've got all metal gears throughout the transmission, which is so awesome. I took this thing apart. Everything looked really well greased, guys. You know, some of the grease kind of spread out. Looks like they ran it really quick to make sure everything worked. But there was definitely a lot of grease inside, more than I would have put if I built it. All metal gears. I kind of talked to you guys about the bearings. And then it has a nice cast motor plate in there, so not a plastic motor plate. And then the spur gear, huge metal spur gear on there, large steel pinion gear, and again, it was all well greased in there as well. It does have a spur gear cover that you can see through the back. Check that out there, and it just looks like a really well-designed setup. One other thing I wanted to mention, the transmission is ready for a 2-speed. Axial will have that as an option, so if you want to install it later, you'll be able to do that. The transmission looks really robust, the driveline really robust. I think, you know, it looks really good. I think, you know, a lot of people that are going to lay the power down are going to be pleasantly surprised that this driveline is going to hold up. The final thing I want to mention is the rear axle. So, you know, some rock bouncers, they do have rear steer on it, and I'm guessing some people are wondering, will they have a rear steer kit available for this? From what I was told, no. They don't have any plan right now to do so. No, you cannot take the front axle and put it on the rear because of the offset. But you know what, guys? If you really, really want one, do me a favor, go down to the comment section below right now, tell Axial, yes, I want a rear steer kit for this, and maybe they'll consider it. You know, I'm pretty sure they're going to be checking out the review. They're going to look at your comments. So if you've got some suggestions of stuff you'd like to see for this rig, let them know. All right. Now, let's see. Let's move on to the suspension. So we've got new shocks on here. We haven't seen shocks like this on an Axial rig before. Aluminum body shock, 3mm shafts. We got some bump stops down at the bottom there. A threaded body so you can adjust the preload, and metal caps with plastic mounting bosses on top, metal pivot balls again. And these shocks, from what I've told, are supposed to be really good. First up, from what I could tell, they're nice and plush, but they're not supposed to leak. They were working really hard to make sure you get a shock that doesn't leak, and this is a design that they've tried before. It doesn't leak, and early reports say no leaking. So fingers crossed this thing holds up, and like I said, these feel really, really good. The front shock is a bit shorter than the rear shock, just wanted to point that out as well. And now we can move on to the links. So as you can see up front, we've got the big heavy duty metal links that Axial has been including with their kits, really heavy duty ball ends on there as well. And then in the rear, we've got the composite trailing arm with you know, the metal upper links as well. And with the trailing arm, they will have optional metal plates that you can put on the outside, kind of like what we saw with the RR10. You could go put the metal plates on there, really stiffen these up, but they feel pretty good from the factory. So we'll see. You know, of course, testing always tells, but so far, you know, just by the looks of it, the cross bracing that we have in the trailing arm there, everything looks like it's going to be pretty solid, especially for a ready to run, and if you're going to use it as a ready to run right out of the box. All right, another thing in the suspension that I want to tell you guys about is this little piece right here. This is actually for the sway bar. And of course, you'll be able to buy it as an option, but I wanted to point that out because some people will want to add that to help with the handling of it. All right, so we've talked about the chassis, we've talked about skid, we've talked about tires, drivetrain. What should we talk about next? Really, all that's left is the electronics. So inside, it's a Spectrum Firma 130 amp speed controller. It's a programmable speed controller. As you can see, it's got the cooling fan on top, really heavy duty wires, even the signal wire here that helps display the voltage on the radio system, which we're going to talk about in a little bit. But this speed controller is a great speed controller. I've used it in a bunch of vehicles, more programming than I'll ever use, but it's always held up really well. Do, you know, really like the smooth feel of the throttle on this. And then back here, let me see if I can show you guys. No, it's kind of too tucked away in there. Actually, maybe let me show you from this side. There is the 2200 kV Spectrum motor that's in there, brushless motor, sensorless, and again, that is definitely going to give this rig a lot of power. Ooh, one other thing I did want to show you back here is the switch. So there is the on-off switch. Basically, you'll reach up from the bottom to turn it on. If you don't like that position, you could actually relocate it to this little mounting tab up here, and that's just an option. I don't know why, but I kind of like this mounting point back here better. All right, now under the battery tray is the receiver box. It's a waterproof receiver box. It's got rubber seals in there. Inside is the AT6000 telemetry AVC equipped receiver. And this rig will actually come with a little bit of AVC dialed into it, just to help keep this rig under control, because there's a lot of power under this thing. You got some open diffs, and I'm sure those wheels are going to grow, so that AVC will help you out a little bit. So the electronics package in here, really good. Finally, what I want to talk to you about is the steering on it. There's the S614S servo, the steel geared servo, the newer servo that they have, a lot better than the previous version of it. And then of course you can see it's got a servo saver on there, and it does feel a little soft to me, but it's going to need a servo saver on a rock bouncer, because you're just going to be smashing into rocks and pulling the throttle. So it's good that this is on here to prevent the servo from possibly burning out. Again, here are your metal links for the steering, metal pivot balls in the ends as well. Check out those really heavy duty rod ends. Really good looking servo setup. It's gonna hit some rocks, so it's good that it is metal up front. All right, I think I've covered everything here. Definitely, there was a lot to talk about. I think I've got it all. One final thing I do want to talk to you guys about is the stuff that comes with. So here is the DX3 radio system. This is great little radio, and it shows you the battery level here on the back, but you've got all your trim dials, really easy to use. It does come with 4 AA batteries, and there is those tabs I was talking to you guys about to help move the battery around within the tray. And then finally, here is your instruction manual. Definitely read through that. All right, guys, it is time to check out the Ryft. I've been dying to drive this thing. Let's go pull the throttle on it. guys like that action footage you just saw? I actually took a lot more video clips, but this thing right here throws a lot of dirt, and it actually covered the lens so many times I lost probably 3/4 of the action footage. So it's the best I had, and hopefully it gave you a great idea of how this vehicle operates. It was a little tough. It's been really cold out here, lots of snow, so there was a lot of mud out on the trail. It was actually 33 degrees that day, so it was kind of muddy out and it was snowing, so it was really crazy conditions, but I got a good feel for this rig. It was a blast to drive, and you know what? If you guys have one of those face shields from the pandemic, you're gonna need to bring it along with you when you're driving this thing. It is so powerful, and these tires are so gnarly, it just throws dirt at you, so if you're standing behind it, you're going to get covered. So, that mountain scene where I was driving it, I picked it because it was similar to a bunch of videos I watched of the busted knuckle films where, they're crawling up through mud, through trees and stuff like that. That climb, that treacherous climb that I wanted to find to show you. And this thing is wild. When you finally pick a line and you're blasting through it, it is just a beast out there. The power, that's what we need to talk about first. This thing has a ton of power. The system in here is much similar to the laser nut, and there's just tons of power on tap. On 3S, I didn't even get to run it on 4S. I ran into a little bit of a situation I'm going to tell you about in a little bit, but on 3S, it is a beast by itself, and I don't know if I would run it on 4S that much because 3S is just that powerful. What I would like to do is actually add some drag brake in the profile. There's a lot of roll, and I think with just a little bit of drag brake added into it, I think it'd be much more manageable to drive. And there's a little bit of cogging on the bottom end. If you're looking for that smooth throttle feel, it's a little jittery just at the bottom, but the power band on this is absolutely incredible. It's just a wild machine to watch. Steering on this thing, we've got a ready-to-run servo in there, but this new 614, it does a decent job. If you're just going to go out there and bash this thing in your backyard and stuff, I think it's going to be just fine for that. But for those of you that are more into RC, that you're probably going to grow out of this servo pretty quick. You want something with a little bit more torque. Just keep in mind that the servo saver in here is taking a lot of the hits and stuff like that. It's taking some bounce away from the servo, and so that kind of comes into play with the steering as well. So just kind of think about that when you're upgrading or throwing option parts on this vehicle. And also along the lines of the steering, one thing I did do was dial out the AVC. I just felt it was a little too twitchy and inconsistent for me, and I just felt I had better control when I turned it off. But overall, I did like the steering on it. I found it to be plenty for what I was doing with it. Suspension wise, this thing is kind of wild. It articulates really well. It twists, it turns. Actually, one thing I want to mention is there is some torque twist to it. When you pull on the throttle, you'll notice the front wheel pull up off the ground, but it's not too crazy. It's not it's not like the old Yeti or anything like that really twisted the chassis. I think it's pretty manageable, but the suspension on here really soaks up a lot, and it's a rock bouncer. It's a wild ride. That's one thing you got to know with this thing. I've been trying to think of a way to explain it to you guys, and it's kind of like frustratingly fun, if that makes sense. It's a blast to drive up, but it veers off. When you find the perfect path and you want to hit that perfect line, it will just veer off on you because it's bouncing off of rocks, it's bouncing off of dirt and tree roots and stuff like that. So you get a little frustrated that you haven't hit your line, and that's the fun part of it. You want to go back and you want to hit that line again, and that's where I really enjoy this rig. But like I said, the suspension really soaks up a lot. I think they did a good job with it, and there's no signs of leaks from the shocks. But I do need to talk to you about a few things, and one of them is I broke it. I broke the front axle. So this is actually just kind of pushed in here. Yeah, I broke it. I went hard with it. I sent it off a rock and just kind of did a torque twisting backflip, and it landed upside down on this wheel here. Now, I do want to know it was 30 degrees out, or 33 degrees out, so it is cold weather. They did put the good plastics on this kit, but in cold weather, going wild with it, things can happen. Pretty much happens with every RC out there. So I'm not too upset with it, knowing what I did, but I show you guys everything, and I managed to break an axle. I talked to the Axial guys. I was the first to do it. I don't know if I should be proud of that, but I did crack the axle. Another thing I want to talk to you guys about is the radio battery alarm. Really cool that it shows you when the battery is going down. However, in cold temperatures, it can wreak a little bit of havoc on electronics, and with the current that this speed controller is pulling, it would actually give me false low battery alarm. So it would beep for a little bit, the lights would drop down, but the battery still had charge in it. And I kind of noticed it around 8 minutes. I was running a new battery pack in there, and just wanted to pass it along that if you encounter a battery alarm and you think it's not right, just wait a few seconds and it might go back to normal. Again, it's because of the power draw and most likely because of the cold weather. Another thing I wanted to mention is I think there is a lot of gear lash in here. I heard what may be clicking, so I'm thinking it might have been gear lash. It may have been a differential. I'm not quite sure. Again, I broke it, so I didn't get to continue my testing. But just be aware of the sounds. If you hear something, you may want to stop. But I'm thinking it was the gear lash because we do have a metal spur and a metal pinion gear in there. And one other thing is, maybe heavier diff oil. I mean, I know it has 1 million in there now. It looked like it wasn't completely full in there, so maybe just adding some more. But definitely the optional spool that they'll have available, that might be a great purchase to get. Or maybe even putting silicone earplugs in the diff. I know guys are doing that with some other vehicles. It might be a good option here as well. But again, other than that, I think this is a great rig. I don't think that this is really going to replace any of the other Axial vehicles out there, just kind of comparing it to the Bomber or even, if you have a Wraith. I think this is a unique driving experience in itself. I don't think it replaces any of the others, and I think you're going to love it in your collection. You're going to have fun with it, and I can't wait to see what people are going to do with these things. It's just going to be wild. I think we're going to see them, out on the scene a lot more this year, and I'm really looking forward to it. All right, guys, let me know what you think about the Ryft in the comment section below. While you're there, hit that subscribe button and the notifications bell. Throw the video a like. We'll see you back soon for some more RC driver videos.